I can't believe I rode right by you. I can't believe I rode right by you. Mike, a man I met just over a week ago, kept saying that over and over, and though I might never see him again, and might not truthfully actually recognize him if he and I were standing together in a line in Trader Joe's, I'm unlikely, as long as I have memory, to forget his words or to forget his kindness. I'm fairly certain I will not forget anytime soon that moment about a week ago, about a mile into a ride on my new bike, going downhill at quite a clip, I must say. When I looked down and realized in a split second that I've relived any number of times since then, that the front wheel had come off. The next thing was not a sight that I remember, it was an experience, the experience of the hard embrace of the canal trail. And as I struggled to breathe, having managed to completely knock the wind out of myself, I saw the couple, who was a couple 100 feet away, stop, look back, start walking away, stop, look back. It was clear they radiated an unwillingness to get involved, so I just waved them on from where I lay on the path. The man waved a relieved hand and they hustled off. Another couple came around the bend, and at this point I was getting up off the path, trying to move the bike off of me. They also walked past me. By this time, however, I had caught my breath and could speak. So I asked if they might help me for just a minute. They turned back, having walked past me, and the man said, "I don't know anything about bikes." This was not my highest priority at the moment. I said, "I just need help turning it around so I can try to get the wheel back on it and walk it home." By now, the encounter with the pavement was making itself known, and I was actually not feeling 100% excited about the walk back home with the bike. "Do you need help?" I heard another voice. "Oh, good, he can help you. He's a bike rider," said the couple, and they scurried off. "I actually don't know anything about bikes," he said. "This is one I borrowed from a friend." "Well, thank you for stopping," I said. "Well, actually, I was right behind you when you fell. And I rode right by," he said. And then I asked myself, what the hell are you doing? You just rode by a person who clearly needs help. "Well, thank you for coming back," I said. "What's your name?" "Mike," he said. "Thank you, Mike." Now, some of us might wish, like Mike, to be more aware in the moment and more conscious in this new year that is before us. And many, like me, might want to be more conscious of all of that which we can be grateful for I certainly know that 2018 was not giving me up without a fight. And it could have been much, much worse. But this is one of the reasons that I value and cherish the rituals around the new year that are found in many cultures, including the ones that inform my heredity, those of Japan, where there are shrine visits by the Japanese on the new year as a way of connecting, even if there is no other shrine visit, and some of you may be here in a shrine visit sort of way, but even if there is no other visit during the year, we'd hope not, we'd love to see you back, but of marking the importance of the turning of a year and a time for new intentions. For me, these times of recommitment remind us of our need to live into our values, to deepen our connections with what we hold most precious. And I want to tell you, I thought I was doing everything right. I was trying at the end of 2018, which was not my favorite year, may I just say, and I know some of you joined me in this. I spent time in silence and contemplation. I was getting rest. I was preparing to enter a new year. I was actually cleaning, which is, I believe, what I was doing in the garage when I must have nicked the lever that was the wheel release. In the virtuous pursuit of exercise, I went for a ride on my new bike. And well, it was bruising to the ego, but it was also bruising to a number of other parts as well. Still, I got myself back up. I wheeled the bike home. Heck, I shouldn't tell you this, but I actually rode home on the flat part. Because I started reflecting immediately about that experience and how like life it is. Not only the part where we have to take that second, third, fourth, and fifth chance, but also how it illustrates something I had been thinking about this whole holiday season, which is how disconnected we can be from one another in this world, in this time. This is the first holiday season where I actually began to believe that shopping at a mall was a sort of spiritual practice. And I believed that, something I've never believed before, because so many people were ordering everything online and never even having the interactions with other human beings that we have in this season when we're waiting in those lines. Not that those are always that spiritual, but it was about connection. I think one of the most insidious forces in our world today is isolation and how isolated people feel from one another. People are finding themselves more and more lonely, more and more alone. And in this tradition, I really like the Japanese practice of sending negajo, the letters that are sent on the new year, because it's about a connection. It may be about other things, business contacts and other things, but it's also about connecting. And it's something that I practice throughout January, not just on the 1st, because I'm not that efficient. But the New Year's greeting also, Akimashi Omodito Gazemasu, is a short form of the phrase that means Happy New Year, but it really means, the full translation is, I count on your goodwill in the new year. I count on your goodwill in the new year. That's a really different kind of greeting, and it's important for me to think about that whole thing. One of the reasons why we can discount this or set it aside or don't like to take on these times of assessment is we don't want to feel pressured, and we also don't want to feel either guilt or shame if perhaps in the course of the last year we have had a few acts within our own lives that have not been those of goodwill. Author Brené Brown is a shame researcher. Yes, makes her living researching shame. Works with large corporations, nonprofits, universities, all kinds of organizations on how to work better to defeat the power of shame. And she notes that there's a difference between guilt, which is really about us having regret about something that we've done, right? That we might want to undo or do differently, and shame, which is a deep sense that there is something wrong with who we are at our very nature. Guilt and shame are very different things. Shame leads people to be defensive, aggressive, and often to hurt others, especially those that they have power over. Guilt can actually lead to apologies or forgiveness, self-reflection, and sometimes those small acts that make up transformation of ourselves and of our world. Tarana Burke was the African-American woman who started the Me Too movement almost a decade ago. She was asked, because of what happened in 2017, to help drop the ball in the Times Square ceremony at the beginning of 2018 at that midnight. But at the end of last year, she spoke about how she didn't intend to start a women's movement. It was a movement about sexual violence and helping survivors. And it was not especially what she truly regrets, which has become a movement about public shaming that has actually, she says, centered the perpetrators rather than the survivors. Shame, or the fear of failure or vulnerability, can keep us from trying to do what we can do, those small things, those small acts of holding up the sky. Joanna Macy is an advocate for people doing what they can, and she works in the field of the environment and helping us understand our relationship to our larger world. She says many people don't do what they can do because they are always afraid that they won't be enough, saying, well, let me get enlightened first and then I'll engage in some other kind of action. Or she says, people say, I'll get my head straight first, I'll get psychoanalyzed, I'll overcome my inhibitions and my neuroses or my hang-ups, and then I'll wade in. The problem with that, she says, is that it presupposes that the world and ourself are different and unrelated, entirely separate, when in fact, the transformation of our world is dependent on these small transformations in our own lives. In other words, we depend greatly on our goodwill towards one another in this world. Now, we don't want to be vulnerable. We often don't want to change. And our world is rapidly changing. The pace of change is being noted by so many observers in our world. And more people are feeling as if they are being left behind. Brene Brown says that there is a very new form of shame that she has seen only in the latest years of her research. It is a shame that she encounters increasingly in her work in the workforce. People who are feeling ashamed because they feel as if the world is changing so fast that it no longer has any place for them at all. They don't feel guilty, they feel shamed, intrinsically wrong in their very being, not wrong in their doing. Here, we inherit the gift of a tradition open to change. It is important about the company we keep, and our tradition invites us to spiritual growth. Sometimes that growth changes us enough that is transformational, and sometimes it makes us different from what we were before. But all growth is not change, and all change is not growth. Sometimes we take that proverbial one step forward, two steps back, or in my case, one bike ride forward, two bike rides back, taking the time to assess where we are that makes that less probable. Transformation is not always a smooth path. It's not always a heroic act. Sometimes the front wheel comes off when you're trying to take a bike ride as part of your effort to reduce the carbon footprint. Sometimes we're just trying to make that small change that we can. Sometimes it is a challenge to even offer our goodwill to other human beings that we encounter in our days and in our lives. We don't here believe that we are like that little sparrow with our feet up, holding up the whole world. But we do believe that we're a little bit like those little stars, that our twinkling and our light is important, brilliant contrast to the nurturing of the dark. We do need to remember that we are connected, and that in this new year, as in every new year, we need one another's goodwill to journey through these new times together. Mike, the kind person who took that moment to come back and check his intentions and then came back to help me, was thanked by me many times in the course of our about 10-minute interaction. Every time I thanked him, he just kept saying, I can't believe I just kept riding. Thank you, I said, as we were saying goodbye one more time. You know what? You came back, and that is all that matters. So let us not ride by this particular precious year. Instead, let's make it a year of intention, connection, vulnerability, and whatever little stars of transformation we are given.